welcome to our channel. Today we are going to discuss our chapter solid state. So what does solid state means? If I just need to explain in simple words, suppose I am having a piece of ice. This piece of ice has few characteristics, that it is almost negligibly compressible. If we just try to compress this ice cube, so it is almost incompressible. So it is having some definite shape, it is rigid, so its volume is independent of container. If I just put this piece of ice in a container, the container has its own volume. This piece of ice is also having volume different from this beaker, from this container. So what we say, that the volume of ice is independent of this container. If I just fill up the container with some water, so the volume of water definitely depends upon the volume of container. So this is what not happening in the state of solids. So we say solids are negligible fluidity as compared to, we can say negligible fluidity as compared to water and gases having the flowing characteristic. If I just heat this piece of ice, or I can say when a solid is heated, the vibratory motion of particles increases. The vibratory motion of particles also increases itself when we heat up this piece of solid. This also result the increase in kinetic energy. When we heat to a particular temperature, the kinetic energy of particles will also increase itself, which ultimately becomes larger enough to overcome the binding forces. When it break down the binding forces in particles, at this stage this solid turns into and form liquid. The temperature at which solid melt under normal pressure is known as melting point. So here the melting point of solid give us the idea. This melting point of solid gives us idea that how stronger the intermolecular particle forces are. Higher the melting point, more will be the forces which bind the particles. I repeat again, more will be the melting point. What does it represent? It represents that binding forces are much stronger. Higher melting point means more will be the force of binding particles of solid. Both oxygen and nitrogen are polar gases in nature. This one is point to be noted. Now I'm going just to list some important thing regarding this solid state, that both oxygen and nitrogen are non-polar. Non-polar means both are having same type of electron activity, that power to attract the electrons, Both oxygen are of same kind, so both are having the same type of attraction. So overall there is no polarity, positive or negative envelopment. So these two gases are non-polar gases at room temperature, and the intermolecular forces are weak van der Waals forces. That is why their melting point are low. That is why its melting point are low. I repeat again, these two gases are non-polar in nature, and intermolecular. These points are to be noted. I'll just repeat again. These things you need to note it down. That the intermolecular, that these two type of gases are non-polar gases at room temperature, and intermolecular forces are weak van der Waals forces. Van der Waals forces. That is why its melting point is low. When we talk about the ethyl alcohol, the forces are intermolecular hydrogen bonding. These are comparatively strong and high melting point as compared to gases. Ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol. I'm just saying to you that hydrogen bonding is also plays hydrogen bonding also plays an important role in deciding the melting point. I'm just going to what I'm going to say over here. Yet you always must consider the hydrogen bonding when you need to compare the melting point. Why is it so? Melting point decide the force of binding particles of a solid. So hydrogen bonding also plays an important role when to decide the melting point or binding forces. The remaining substances are either metal. What are the remaining solid substances? It may be metal, it may be ionic solid. In nature we are going to just discuss in detail in further lectures, but where rest of the solids are metal or ionic, which are solid in nature. These forces are quite stronger. So how we can find out that these forces are quite stronger? Forces are quite stronger. How we can identify? Because their melting point is very much greater. We have find the evidences for it, proof for it. So this is all about the solid state, our first lecture. Next we are going to discuss about the crystalline and the amorphous solid.